District 9 is a low-budget sci-fi action film that gained much praise when it was released in 2009. It's usually remembered for its thick social commentary and surprisingly solid visual effects, and rightfully so, but there's even more to love, so let's take a look. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast, and it is a celebration of sorts because this is episode 200. I can't believe how much Tara has aged since we started this show. It really is quite spectacular.
But taking my vitamins also. My hair's gotten so long.
Episode 200. We started the show in March, April 2019. We are now in June of 2023. 200 episodes in, and we had our patrons vote for what this episode was going to be. And it was indeed District 9. Kind of the underdog, actually, because the other options were Back to the Future and RoboCop, and District 9 won.
So sure RoboCop was going to win.
It came last place, Tara. I'm sorry to tell you.
It was tied for Back to the Future for a little while. How could it be last?
Because more votes came in, and it was last.
I want receipts.
So voting works. Okay, so... Yeah, 2009 film, District 9, directed by Neill Blomkamp. We've somehow not done any of his movies yet on the show. Obviously, this was his first, and won't be the last. We'll definitely do the others at some point, but we're here for District 9, his debut, his big, prestigious film that got a lot of good buzz back in 2009. And we'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. The basic premise of this is that it's set in Johannesburg, and a couple of decades ago, a giant alien spaceship arrived over the city. And did you get the eyelash, Tara?
No, keep talking. I'm going to get a mirror.
Okay, I'll keep talking. So, this giant spaceship appeared over Johannesburg, and effectively it was carrying about 1 million or so aliens, who are later referred to as the prawn, because they look kind of like prawns, apparently. And they are brought down, and they're effectively put in a makeshift little town, a slum, if you will. And this film is very much about the government organization that is trying to police them, keep them in line, and trying to exploit them for their alien technology and stuff like that. And the main character is named Wikus, played by Sharlto Copley, and he is this company man. He cares about his job, he cares about moving up in the hierarchy. But things change when he gets infected with some alien DNA and starts to turn into one of them. And I'll leave it there. I think that's the spoiler-free, kind of just the setting, the premise. We'll get into all that. But, yeah, so you'd seen this before, I assume, Tara.
Correct. I think I saw it in the theaters. But I definitely saw it really early.
Yeah. I don't think I saw it in theaters, but I saw it that year. It was when it hit the home market later that year. I saw it.
Yeah, I was still in the Navy when it came out. Yeah, 2009. But I want to say I watched it on base at that time. I think it was playing on military bases too.
Yeah, I went into the first time with basically no knowledge. I just heard a little bit of buzz. I didn't know the director. I didn't know the premise really. I just kind of went in blind, and I mean, just to get into our general feelings here, I left it being kind of floored by how much I loved it, and we'll get into that. Which I guess just leads me naturally into the question: is how did you feel watching it again? And has that changed significantly since the first time you saw it?
This must be a special episode because you actually gave your feelings on something first.
Why lie? I love District 9. Why lie about
it? Why keep it a secret? Yeah, I also was incredibly impressed by this. I love that the movie opens and it's like, oh yeah, aliens showed up this time ago, and we thought they would land somewhere in New York or Chicago, but we're in Johannesburg, and it's this is really refreshing. We get such a new voice. We get an area of the world that we're not used to seeing on film. We get a sci-fi movie that's an allegory for a real life thing happening right now, and like we get an amazing lead character and actor. Like I wish he was a superstar after this film, because he is so legit funny and great at this character. He just brings so much life to it, and like you see his conflictions inside, and you know he is a good person, but he's just like doing his job, and he likes being good at what he does, and he is good at what he does, but like I don't know, like he brings so much levity, but so much heart in it as well. Like it's easy to root for him when things start happening, but it's also really easy to laugh at him. Oh, and the body horror in this is really exceptional.
Yeah, I love the character as well. I think he's a character who has a little bit of humanity to start with, but he actually is quite a bad character, and that's kind of the arc of the movies, what he, his lessons that he learns. But then on top of that, you've got, honestly, for a relatively low budget movie, it was made for like under 30 million, something thereabouts. It looks great, and the CG mostly still holds up. Like there's definitely times where it's got that kind of, it's not really there look to it that CG can have, but even when it has that, it still feels like it's stylized enough that it doesn't feel like it hurts it too much. Like there's a couple of things especially that it almost looks like it's stop motion. It's not, it's CG, but it almost has this kind of charm to it, the way it moves, where they've like Blomkamp, like
they've been inspired by RoboCop.
Like, yeah, Blomkamp, whatever voodoo he works with his movies to get them looking the way they do, and I love how his science fiction looks. I love that it's grimy but colourful. Like that's how I would describe it. It's very grimy, dirty, used, but colourful. There's popping colour. Even the main alien that we get to know like has like a red vest on, and that like pops. There's another one that's got yellow kind of mixed in all down his body. That really pops. There's a lot of that stuff like throughout.
Yeah, and it Johannesburg feels like a dry place too. So everything feels kind of like dirty and sandy and like uncomfortable, but also like it's not afraid to like do this all in the daytime also. Like I feel like if you had lower budget, you would probably try to do a lot of things at night so you can hide special effects better, but like this movie takes place almost entirely like during daylit hours. Like everything's really well lit, and maybe that is like a part of the whole allegory too, is like this is happening, this isn't hidden, Yeah,
I think it's shocking how well they show up, or how well the CG holds up, and it looked great at the time. It stuck out amongst films that were 4, 5, 6 times its budget. This came out the same year as a lot of like 2009. I always look at as this sort of weird renaissance for science fiction, and I always go back and forth of which is my favorite of that year. Because there's two, and it's two. It's this and it's Moon, right? And don't get me wrong, I like Avatar more than most. I do, right? Tara's making it. Are you upset that I'm not saying J.J. Abrams Star Trek? Is that what this?
I thought it would at least be in the mix.
I mean, I enjoyed that when it came out, but it was definitely fourth in that list for me out of the sci-fi movies for 2009.
It's definitely better than Moon.
What? No, you're a fool. I think what's so weird about this and Moon coming out in the same year, and both being excellent, and me being conflicted, like and constantly going back and forth of which one that I rank higher, is that both are debuts from directors who have kind of went on to have like murky like careers afterwards, but they've never quite captured or lived up to those first movies that they made. And that's kind of fascinating. And Source Code was pretty good from Duncan Jones, don't get me wrong, but like Mute was a travesty, and I don't even
Warcraft.
No one likes Warcraft. This is just you.
I love Warcraft.
No one else likes it though. This is just a you thing.
It was made for me, okay? It was made for the fans.
Oh, what a cop-out answer. But it's wild to me that this year had such creativity from science fiction, and it's the two lower budget ones that I love more, because they do feel like they've got the more interesting explorative stories that are really saying a lot. Moon's more about, obviously, like it's a very introspective film about a human being. This is a very much about a character as well, but it's about all these bigger ideas in the world and how we treat each other and how we treat people, or in this case, treat aliens, because they are quote unquote different. In fact, the thing is that I think one of the posters actually just says on it, like the question that lays up for the film is, but what would we do to them? Because most alien movies where they come down in a big ship, Independence Day or whatever, it's always, oh, what are they going to do to us? They're going to blow everything up. They're going to enslave us. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. But the poster for this says, what would we do to them? And that is a fascinating question, where you go into this movie where unquestionably the humans are the villains. And that is fascinating, and much like the setting that you brought up, it makes it feel so refreshing and different. And I don't think anything's really quite captured like the qualities that this film has for me in its time since it came out. And it's I think it's a great science fiction film. I think it's a perfect story from start to end. People always talk about a possible sequel someday, but I think, well, you could do that. I don't think it's remotely necessary, because the story the movie's telling is done. It made its point, and it doesn't need a sequel, even though there's an obvious door that you could go through to do a sequel.
I think I think I read that there was one in the works. Is that not like set in stone?
When was this? Was this like recent, or?
No, honestly, it was like when I went to Letterboxd and I saw that, and IMDb, and I typed in district, and then District 10 pops up with a poster.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a real thing. Maybe one day it will be, but I don't think it's really yet. Everything's on strike just now anyway, so nothing's...
Yeah, it's been happening for a while anyway. I was trying to look up my roommate is actually like, he works in marketing for films, like he does the trailers and stuff like that, and I know he worked on the District 9 one, and I think he came up with like the tagline during the trailer, like, they're not blank, and then goes, they're not human, or something like that.
Okay.
It's like one of his proud things that he has. He likes to tell people.
Very neat, very neat.
Sorry, I can't remember what the actual tagline was.
Yes, maybe not demonstrating how memorable it was. Yeah.
Sorry.
And also, you mentioned how good Copley is. Copley is fantastic, and he kind of like is the glue that makes all this come together, because of how good that performance is as Wikus. So yeah, I'm excited to work through this and talk about like everything that's in it, because I do think it's a very rich film that satisfies both my desire for a good story that's well crafted and good science fiction themes, but also satisfies that part of me that wants good action, because the action in this, when it kicks off, and the entire third act, obviously it's much smaller in scale to your big AAA blockbusters, but I find it like more satisfying than most of them, because it sets up some simple things and it pays them off with cool action. And I will never tire of seeing human heads explode. I will never tire from it.
There is some really good body horror stuff in here. Lots of goo.
Lots of goo, lots of blood spatter.
Lots of bags of goo that we all know humans are.
Yeah. And also, I love that it's R-rated as well. I love, because it feels like it would be sugarcoating this to not have them shouting F-bombs and stuff, because it's like, yeah, you would be in this situation. Like, that's the extremeness of it. So, yeah. I love District 9. So, what a choice for episode 200. It's a bit weird that it wasn't RoboCop or Back to the Future, given that those are definitely bigger movies, pulp culture-wise, but hey.
And they both start off franchises.
We've got enough franchises plates spinning, though, so that's a blessing.
We do, yeah.
So it's a blessing. We've got more Apes movies to do. We've got...
God, yes.
We've got Star Wars movies to do. We got tons of things in the works. Then bonus episode-wise, we've got Mimic sequels, at least one more Species sequel. We've got tons of shit.
Yep.
So, yes, lots of stuff happening. So, is there anything else we want to say? I like the music. I suppose I'll say that before we get to spoilers. It's not super noticeable early on, but it really comes into it a bit more as it goes, and there's that kind of like, not chanting, that's not the word I'm looking for, but like that solo kind of vocals, like, almost religious sounding kind of
Mhm.
like type of song.
Just yeah,
Yeah.
like a like a chant,
I mean,
maybe.
that's what I said. That I didn't
No.
want to call it, but yes, maybe that is the best word for it. Maybe that is the only word for it. I don't know. I'm sure there's a musical term for this type of singing.
like a prayer.
Hey, yeah, yeah, something like that, right? That was probably a horrible interpretation of it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So, yeah.
I like it too. I think some of the filming is a little bit like we need to make this feel kind of documentary-esque, which is fun when they incorporate all that. But then when it's clearly not a documentary anymore and it's just, showing us just a regular camera, like it's still shaking a lot, and I find that to be like, you can steady out a little bit. But I do ultimately like how the story is told through a lot of how we're seeing it through the media.
Yeah,
in Johannesburg, and
it's basically a tool to like do a lot of exposition at the start, because there's a lot to explain with the status quo of the world, and that they do that through all these interviews at the start and the news stuff. And I actually do appreciate that, even though that stuff like fades away for the most part for most of the movie. It comes back a little bit at the end, of course, but it fades away. But I think keeping that documentary looking style to the way it shoots the scenes is a way to make it feel like it is all very cohesive, even though it doesn't stick to that. I remember thinking of this movie, we did an Interstellar already, but I remember when Interstellar came out and it started off with interviews and that, I'm like, but you're doing District 9? Come on, Nolan, what are you doing? And sure enough, that movie felt like it didn't need those. That was like one of the biggest complaints we had. Like, because Interstellar is great. I love Interstellar, even more so the last time we watched it. But my one critique was
it's so easy to forget that they're in there.
I know, like it just. Whereas with this one, I remember some really good little moments from those interviews. I remember like when they bring something up or they're explaining something, or like and it's important that even though we don't know Wikus is going to be the important main character yet. I mean, if you know the actor, but it's important in the context of the movie that he's the first one we see. So we see him sort of setting his interview up first, and then it goes off in interviews. We see clips from tons of people before it goes back to him. But it normally starts with him, and it shows you a little bit of his humanity, because he's sort of cracking jokes because he's like nervous about the camera and he's trying to fix his mic. It's like we're going to humanize him, because the next like half hour is going to kind of make him a monster, right? Who has to grow. So you have to like do that.
Yeah, I guess I also appreciate having the news footage in there for the type of allegory this is, because most people, I imagine that this message is for, are for people who are living in Johannesburg or South Africa during or after apartheid, and then like looking at the news at the slums and thinking, this is we don't want this around here. So being able to draw those parallels, I think is important to include the news angle of that, since most people consume media like that. And
I think what's good about it as well is that it's obviously very specifically about that in Johannesburg in South Africa, but the actual like key qualities to it and the messaging that it's saying is universal, and that it's all about how we treat people, and it's all about how we treat people who we see as different and how we look down on them and things like that. So
I mean, there's a parallel, an easy parallel in Los Angeles right now to the homeless crisis, and just how people's different perspective on it. Like, it's clearly terrible, but like people can be so cruel when they really come down to how they feel.
Yeah.
About citizens,
So yeah, we'll give the spoiler warning so we can dip into it and talk about all the stuff that goes on. I think the opening, obviously we said, is like all the interviews, and so this is just a good place to say here's the basics at the start of the movie, which we've explained some of just in the premise. But the ship showed up 20 years ago. It hovered there for a bit. They eventually went in and they brought down all the aliens that were there into this slum-like region. But we see that like around the city, even though they're technically supposed to be walled into this slum, like people have signs up saying no, prawns allowed and things like that. And I even feel bad saying prawn, because they make it very clear quite early on that this is
that's supposed to be derogatory.
This is the derogatory term, but it's this unique thing where we never get the real name of the species. We don't know what to call them other than prawns, so that's just what they are. But it's really interesting. There's so much to set up here at the start of this, though, that I love. I love that they've given them all these human names that they didn't ask for. So, like, the main alien we get to know is Christopher Johnston. That's clearly not his name.
Yeah.
But that's what they've given him, so that's what he's called.
It's the most blandest name you can think of.
I don't know. Second, I'll say John Smith is the most bland, but it's close.
They probably ran out of John Smith.
Yeah, they probably had like 10 John Smiths. They have to start diversifying a bit. And we set up, you know, the MNU, which is what Wikus, that's what he works for, and he is excited that he's heading up this project, which is to go into the District 9, the slums, and basically hand out the 24 the 24-hour notices that they're all being evicted and moved to District 10. So we see him like prepping for this. We see him, he's like training like a young guy who's going to take his old job. Who I noticed in the early interview, he's wearing that, you can see the orange like jumpsuit at the prison uniform.
Yeah.
So you don't really find out until the very, very end why he's in a prison uniform, but it does. It's for a good reason though, for the audience's perspective. He does a heroic thing, but so we set up that we've got this like privatized military, which is a thing that's in a few of Blomkamp's films. He's clearly very critical of privatized military who think they're big shots.
I imagine so.
So, and we see the main good like bald guy. He like picks on Wikus and like threatens him at one point here because Wikus is saying they're breaking the rules by taking in too much ammo. Which is important for his character and his growth. I'll talk about that more later when we're talking about like his whole overall arc. But yeah, Wikus in this early part where they go into the slums, which is a great, you know, like following them in the cars and then seeing them go around and do their rounds where they're trying to like serve these papers and get them to sign something. Like every single bit of it is like, oh god, Wikus, why are you so horrible? Like because the first one
it's so funny though.
Oh, it's very funny. Yeah, because and I think part of, like, let's be honest, the South African accent is quite a likable accent. It's a very gentle accent, I guess.
It's very close to New Zealand in that way, where you're just like, yeah, you're sweet.
Yeah. But the first alien they go up to is like, hey, do you want to sign this? We'll give you some cat food. Because the aliens, the prawns love the cat food for some reason.
Yeah, it's like, it's legit drugs to
them. And basically, the alien just like slams the pen onto the pad, and he's like, that counts. That's a signature. He touched pen to paper. That counts. And it's like, that's a bit. Like, these aliens clearly don't understand. And that's one of the other things to set up as well, is that for whatever reason, all the aliens from the ship that came down are all at the working class. Like, you know, they're basically all the lower tier aliens. And they don't really know why or how, but like all of the uppers, all the people who actually ran the ship, the intelligent aliens, they all seemingly died somehow. And that's kind of like what makes Christopher Johnson interesting, is that either he's like the only survivor of those types of aliens, or he is someone who has risen up to the challenge of like trying to fix their ship. And
yeah, we don't know. We don't really get his background.
Yeah, which it lets you theorize, and I think because they give you everything you need with him, because you sympathize with him, you care about him and his son. You know, you get all that stuff.
Yeah, he's got an adorable little prawn baby.
Yeah. And speaking of
it is cute.
Speaking of prawn babies, I don't know if it's the next evil thing that Wikus does, but we have to talk about this. I did not remember this dark ass scene.
Me neither, actually.
So he takes his what was the word? Apprentice. That's the word I'm looking for. His apprentice up to. He's like, oh hey, we found a nest of the babies because they hang the dead cows over their eggs and they drip down and whatever. He's like, but they're not allowed to breed though. We have to keep they don't want them spreading and multiplying, obviously. So they want to control their birth rates. So he's like, yeah, so here, this is how you like kill one of the eggs, and he like pulls out some of the tubing, and he's sort of laughing about it. He's like, hey, there's your first abortion, apprentice man. And I'm like, this is so dark. And then it gets worse because he's like, it would take too long to like individually like do this to all the eggs, so we just take a flamethrower to the building. This is what needs to be done, and it's on fire, and I'm just like, this is horrific.
Yeah, I think he says that they have to have a permit or something, because when he sees the little boy with Christopher Johnson, he's like, do you have a permit for him? And he's like, yes, don't kill my kid. Yeah, I think the scene's really interesting also because it's kind of shot like the show Cops in a little way, going up and like interviewing where people are just like, I don't understand what's going on. Or like, well, I'm in charge, so it doesn't matter. Or
Yeah,
I think
they're
he's
all kind of like that.
go
All
ahead.
these like little alien houses they go up to are all like that. I think, like you say, this cop
Yeah.
style of like them going up and talking, and they clearly don't understand. And he notices that Christopher Johnson's smarter because when he goes up to talks to him, he's like, "Oh, this one's brighter. We can't trick him with cat food. Like we're going to have to." Like he basically tries to threaten his son and be like, "Hey, you know, your son there, like he's living in a dangerous place here with you. Actually, maybe I should need to take him." So again, Wikus being evil for the good of the company, for the good of corporate, for
Yeah, it's probably what he's been taught too. Like he's really proud of being good at his job, and you can kind of see like the arrogance he has when he shows up at this place because we've seen the prawns like destroy people very easily. So they have to feel like they have to really be oppressed or like
so actually
you know.
that reminds me, the apprentice is like, "Do I get a bulletproof vest?" And he's like, "Oh, there's none left. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it." I'm like, that's easy for you to say, Wikus.
Gunfire immediately when they step out of the helicopter too.
So,
But yeah, like I like his like hubris where he's just like, I'm just gonna walk up to these prawns and like I'm in charge, and he talks down to them even though they're like towering over him, and you know they're so much stronger than him, but he still he still has all this confidence because of the class system. He doesn't see them as like a threat to him,
oh,
you know,
yeah,
because he knows he has power over them, and he's always had that. Like he's never ever feared them.
he's so condescending when he's talking to Christopher's son. He's like, "Hey, you little nipper, here's a sweet for you," and then obviously he throws the lollipop back at his face, and he's like, "Ah, you mother effer, you little shit. Like, how dare you?" And like he immediately changes his tune. But I do want to point out that all throughout this, like he is constantly funny to watch doing this stuff, even though what he's doing
Yes.
is evil and dark,
Horrific.
and it's worse than most things in real life, right? Like it's the movie part of it where they can go. It's the idea that if the people that were being treated like this didn't like weren't even human, like they would get away with even more because it's like, oh, they're not even human, like this, yeah, burn their egg sacs and like, you know, against their will and not let them do anything, like all of this.
Yeah, we have to control the breeding. We have to control the numbers.
Yeah, it's awful. It's so you very quickly start to sympathize, and when he's going around talking to other aliens, they set up the guns and how the humans can't use their weapons, which is something that the big, you know, corporation that's doing all this, that works with the military, they want to like figure out how to use the weapons, but human DNA, the skin just won't trigger it. And there's also like a gang who operates inside District 9 who are also like trading and selling stuff to the prawns and getting weapons from them, and they want to be able to use them. So it's setting up all these key players, and all this stuff all pays off wonderfully in the third act because they've set up all this stuff so that when everything goes down later, it's like it's chaos with a reason, and I appreciate that. But while he's going out doing his rounds like this, and you know, there's a bit of an action scene with one of the aliens grabbing their gun. We get introduced to Christopher looking for something with his son and his friend, right? And when Wikus comes to like the friend's house, this friend ends up going outside and getting killed, right? Because he fights back. An evil bald military man comes in and kills him, and you know Christopher's watching from around the corner and he's quite upset. And notably, they've had like they've been looking for something for years. Like literally, it's taken 20 years to assemble a plan to like get back up to the ship and leave. And there's this fluid that's in a canister that's in his friend's house, which Wikus gets to, and it's this that he opens and it sprays in his face, and that starts his transformation. But so that's the big MacGuffin of the movie, and that's something that'll come back. But I like that it cuts to, because one thing we've not even mentioned yet is that the aliens, like, they all have subtitles. Like we get to see what they're talking about, and they're interacting.
They have the Wookiee thing where people seem to understand them, but they also understand English, but they just can't speak it. So they can't speak each other's languages, but they understand it.
Yeah, and later on, I appreciated at one point he says something quite fast, and Wikus is like, "Oh, can you slow down with the clicks there? I thought you said 3 years." You know, like I appreciate that there's like, yeah, okay, we understand that he is listening to the clicks. That's what he's
Yeah.
He's not just hearing magic English somehow that we are not. There's they're trained to actually understand some of this, which is cool. So, yeah, this entire first like half hour is like so effective in like setting up this world, setting up how bad it is, all these things that Wikus is doing. And I guess the thing that I really want to get to with Wikus here, other than just obviously that he is not treating these aliens as humans at all, he is completely awful to them, is that he has kind of a sniveling little, like, coward, right? You know, like, when he tries to challenge the military guys and they just put him in his place, I think one of the genius little things about the movie is that he doesn't, like, necessarily realize early on that he's kind of down the food chain himself in the human side of things, where there's these other humans that are above him that are just using him, the military guys, but then also his father-in-law, who is like the CEO of the company, which we've not even mentioned yet. I love how actually when it says he got a promotion, it cuts to the father-in-law CEO, and it's like, the fact that he's married to my daughter had nothing to do with him getting a promotion. Like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, but it seems also like his father knows that this promotion means he's going to be put in like imminent danger a lot of the time.
He's expendable, yeah.
So, yes, I think it's also a little bit, you married my beautiful daughter and you do not deserve her, so you're going to get this promotion, which is disguised as like, you know, possible death.
Yeah.
Since so many people die in District 9.
Yeah. I think that's such a smart job of like just how much he believes in the system and that what he's doing is right and justified, and he's he really cares about doing it, but he cares about doing it, of course, for his own gain, because he's happy that he's moving up the ranks. You know, when he gets the promotion, he stands up and says, "Oh, I'm taking the big stage," and he shakes the boss's hand, and it's all very. It's got that like Office Space kind of fake niceness sort of quality to it.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I understand.
So, really, really dig all that. So, do you want to talk about how disgusting it is when he starts to change?
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. I think it's really good body horror. I mean, it reminds me of, like, I guess the most obvious comparison would be the Cronenberg Fly film, because that one has a similar transformation style where things are becoming more insect-like, and like, if that's the case, you don't need fingernails, you don't need all your teeth, and it doesn't get quite as nasty as the Fly does, but like it is really visceral.
I mean,
still.
the fingernails coming out did make me look away a little bit. It's pretty nasty.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gross.
Pretty nasty. Yeah. Obviously, he's got his arm because he gets injured in one of the fights early on, and he's got like a cast on and like a sling. And when he takes it off at the hospital later after he blacks out, there's like a pincer instead, you know. And he's like, and he starts freaking out. And it's worth mentioning, like, the doctors for this company, like, immediately just like, oh, like, we have to like treat him like he's a specimen that could spread. And then once they realize that he's not going to spread, immediately it's like, how can we use him to like,
how can we exploit this? Yes, maybe this is like, he's no longer human anymore, so now it's just, well, this is what we need, this is our key, this is the thing that we've been looking for. And they talk about like using him nose to tail pretty much, right? Like, it's, we could even crush his bones and use that for like DNA or whatever.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, this is after the testing stuff, but they basically say he's going to keep transforming and that's bad for us, but right now there's a perfect balance of human and alien, so maybe we could make like a serum to give to like soldiers so they could use the alien tech. But yeah, like, but the first probable real moment of humanity outside of just like some little nice qualities that make him feel more human is when they're forcing him to fire the guns, and he's like, no, F you, I'm not firing them. And they're just putting up like dead pigs and stuff for him to shoot at. And he's like, he doesn't want to comply, and he's begging for his father-in-law to like, help him and not do this to him. And he's like, no, you're just a tool to him now. You're just a product. But
yeah,
they eventually bring out a prawn. They bring out an alien with a target on its back. And immediately, and this is probably the first time you start to think, oh, maybe he is actually good deep down. Like, he's not soulless, he's not hopeless, because he's like, hey, like, no, like, I'll shoot the pigs. Like, bring the dead pig back out. Like, I don't need to shoot the prawn. I don't need to shoot him, right? Like, let's not do this. And they just keep electrocuting his arm so that his finger, like, tenses up. And of course, the alien explodes. And yeah, it's like a really sad
Not
moment.
after like going through a huge amount of terror and stuff where even us watching it's like, don't do it, you know?
They do it.
Because not that we haven't had it already like empathy for the prawns at this point, but like that was a really sad moment.
Well, I think the beautiful part of it is that like they're treating the prawns awful like from the start of the movie, but this is the moment where you realize they're treating him just as bad, if not worse, than they're treating the prawns now, right? Like this is now he's been, whether or not he's ready to accept it, and he's not, because for a lot of the movie his goal is to try and fix himself and like go back to being human, but this is really the first sign where he's kind of starting to like sympathize with the prawns, and it's a big moment, and they're going to cut him up, and of course he's able to like break free, and he goes on the run, which leads to a whole section of the film where he's like on the outside, he's stealing phones, he's trying to buy fast food at his fast food place, and on the news they've decided to run a story to explain how he exists to the public, which is that he screwed one of the aliens, which, like, they make a point of mentioning that there's interspecies prostitution at the start, so there's been lots of at least presumably female humans that have been taking some prawn, if you will.
That's what it showed anyway. So yeah.
So and none of them have shapeshifted. So, but no, apparently he is shifted. Which maybe you could could you kind of like say this is not like a super in-depth one, but could you kind of like slightly relate this to like an STD and AIDS and like the demonization of like gay people because of AIDS?
Yeah, I suppose you could. Like, I mean, the picture that they use for it though is just absolutely ridiculous. Oh, yeah. Like they have photographic evidence, or it's like a graphic that's made up for the news channel, and it's not. I mean, clearly the both are made up in my scenario, but like.
Yeah, I think the photograph is meant to be fake. Like it's something the news has made up for the purpose of the story, as opposed to
for the headline of it,
as opposed to here's an actual photograph of the deed
that we have of him. Yeah, or it's
because
also made up.
Yeah,
like it's absolutely ridiculous. So it's hard for me not to just see that and laugh, but you may be right. There might be a deeper angle here.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's like one of the weird.
I mean, you're probably right also, where it's just like, this is a separation. This is why you shouldn't intermingle.
This is like, I think that's part of the interesting charm that I don't think about as much with this movie, is just how good it is at being funny a lot of the time, even though I would never call it a comedy, and I think all of its strengths lie elsewhere, but it is this like constantly humanizing part of it, is like how funny Wikus can be when he's reacting like over the top to something, or if he's scared, and not in a way that you're laughing at him necessarily. Like you maybe you are at first a little bit, but there's always that human tether, and I think that's where the performance of Sharlto Copley is so layered, because he's making you laugh in a way that you're kind of laughing at him, but you're always kind of like seeing him as a human being who you're sort of seeing become a better person, because he's starting to sympathize more with the people he was helping. Like one of my favorite little lines of the movie is he sneaks into District 9 because no one's going to go looking for him there, and he ends up back with Christopher Johnson and his son, and the son takes a liking to him and stuff. But it turns out that this part of the ship that fell down years ago was under his shack. He built his shack on top of this like little, like basically like a shuttle for the ship. And it's like, oh, if
like
we
an escape pod,
if we can get this back up there, he can get the ship going and do whatever. He could even fix Wikus. He could reverse it. And he's like, oh, okay, that's great. Let's do it. He's like, okay, where's my goop? Where's my canister of goop that I had at the start of the movie? And Wikus is like, oh, we confiscated that, and it's back at the the headquarter building. And he's like, shit. Well, and there's this really sad scene where Christopher Johnson's sitting with his son, and he's showing him like the leaflet for District 10, and he's like, hey, we'll have to move here now, and that might be our tent. And my favorite line of the whole movie, well, one of my favorite lines, there's a couple that later on that I really like too, is where Wikus comes in and says, you don't want to move there, it's basically a concentration camp. I think that line is such a good line because it's so blatantly honest, but it's also him kind of admitting what that is, and like it feels like a self-realization for him as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, people talk about like what we should do with refugees, or what we should do with the homeless problem and stuff, and it's like, oh, we should give him housing. And it's, well, that's not fair or whatever. And it's like, what if it was you? Like, what if there's something happens and like, and you need help from the government and they turn their back on you and put you in something like this, And it could be, nobody expected the Ukraine thing. And now all those people need help. And are they going to be second class human beings because of that? And what if, you don't know what's going to happen. And you could just be really down on your luck or get in a back injury or something and get put on opioids and all of a sudden you have a problem, and
so much,
who knows?
Yeah, so much science fiction's about empathy. Like, so much of it is.
Yeah.
And, this one is coated with that theme. And
yeah, totally.
Basically there's throughout this like last like middle part of the film, like Wikus is trying to befriend his wife, and his wife's not like his wife's important as a character for him, but she's not like a character for us. She's not that in-depthly written, but he clearly cares about her, and he's trying to phone her like for a long time, and she eventually calls him because he stole this guy's phone, and basically she's he's begging her to like the sex stuff with the aliens is not true. In fact, I love this is just like one of his funny lines where he's like, I would never engage in pornographic activities with a pro, which I just thought was a really funny line. not I like it because he's saying that, but pornographic doesn't like it doesn't really mean exactly what he says.
Like it's either like his innocence coming out a little bit, or like maybe that's just how they talk in South Africa. I
don't know. It's like, it wouldn't be pornographic if you did it. It would be pornographic if like you watched it or you recorded it or so on and so on. But then again, the newspapers have this photograph, so maybe I don't know where it crosses over into that. But
right.
But like he has this phone call with the wife, and she's like, "No, I believe you." And she clearly like doubts that her father is like a good person. There's like one scene with her and her dad where he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." He's like, "He's probably a lost cause. You should move on." And she just has this look at him like, "You prick, I know who you are. Like, you've done this." But she says,
well, he seems a little inconsistent about what's happened to him also.
Yeah.
So she's probably picking up on that a bit.
But she says on the phone that she does love him. She's not giving up on him, and this is like the motivation he needs to be like, come and say, hey, no, don't go there. That's a concentration camp. We have to get your space scoop. And he's like, well, how? You said it was in the headquarters.
Suicide mission, yeah.
And he's like, okay, let's get some weapons. So he goes to the gang, right? The gang who's like been trading and like collecting these weapons, and he tries to like buy some weapons. And they realize who he is because he's been all over the news. And they set up early on in the film that some of these gangs like are kind of superstitious, and they think that they can get powers from eating the aliens, and they want to eat his arm. So they go to cut it off, but Wikus fights back. But most importantly, he grabs one of the alien guns, which they don't really have like that secure because no one can fire it, so it's not really that threatening.
Yeah, they're just toys at this point.
But he grabs this gun, and I love that it sends like a shockwave, and like the guy it hits like goes flying through this shack wall into the air.
It's quite the stun gun. Yeah.
It's quite wonderful. These are very science fiction weapons.
Very.
Yeah, and like and we've not really delved on it too much, but one of the big themes of this movie is the exploitation and how much of this is fueled by the government in this company wanting access to these weapons, and they're going to do anything, including cut up Wikus, to be able to use them because this is such a money making. So again, there's a lot of like commentary here on weaponry and production of that stuff.
Yeah, exploitation and all that.
So he fights his way out with this weapon and a bag of guns. He gets another big alien weapon for Christopher. And we get, and honestly, from here to the end, this movie is just like an excellent action movie. Like you wouldn't necessarily think that with the budget going in, but it's them as a team going in with these alien rifles and just like the one Wikus is using for this part of the movie. It sends like an electric bolt that just makes heads explode, or in some cases, entire humans explode, and they set up like an explosion to go into because there's a bit of hubris on the military guy, the main one that's bald, who is like, that little bastard, we'll find him, he won't know what hit him. And then immediately as soon as he says that, this explosion hits the side of the building. And again, it's like an alien explosion because it's like black smoke, but there's like electricity like in the black smoke. So even the explosions look kind of cool.
I like the design of it, yeah.
Yeah, I was into all that.
I like the design of the weapons too. They look like they could be something from like I never played it, but like Mass Effect or like a video game.
Yeah.
Where it's like we got alien weapons or space weapons. You know, they're like bright orange and white colored, like old sci-fi.
Colorful, yeah.
Really
so
cool.
yeah, back to the color scheme of the movie.
I love this part also because like even with the demonstrations of the weapons that we got earlier, I was still like, but it's still just the two of them and they don't seem like fighters. So the fact that the first explosion you see with them going into it is just a giant thing that takes out a bunch of people at once, you're like, okay, now I understand that they probably have the advantage in this situation.
They've got a chance. Yeah, they've got I think, yeah, and obviously it's worth mentioning here that even though it feels like, by admitting that the District 10's a concentration camp, Wikus's goals here are still personal. They're still for him. He's still, like, his goal is still to fix himself. But that's actually when he first get taken in here, when he was brought in with the arm earlier on, he did look around and see, like, some prawns, like, lying dead on tables and said, wait, what are you doing to these prawns? So we actually believe him in a minute when he says he didn't know that this was going on. Like, he never knew they were being experimented on. All this crazy, like, big business, like, doing science experiments on the prawns and to try and, like, I don't know, extract valuable DNA or figure things out, or probably just find a way to make the weapons work kind of thing, if nothing else. So.
Or, like, a weakness for the prawns just to eliminate them with a virus or something.
But they're going through the halls and they've got each other's backs, and so it's a really fun scene of them blasting with these big, like, weird alien weapons. But I think the heart of the film really is this moment here where they get in, they get the goop, and they're about to leave, and Christopher notices his friend from earlier in the film lying dead on the table, and he's been, like, dissected and, like, burned and whatever else. And he sort of stands there looking all sad, and the music's getting kind of emotional, and Wikus is, like, having to take cover because there's guys shooting at him, and he's kind of yelling. And I love this because you don't get really that much screen time with Christopher and his friend before his friend dies, or even that much time with him and his son, but you get enough that there is, like, enough of a character there that you're like, okay, I don't really know what his likes and dislikes are. I don't get to know those types of things about him as a character, but I know that he wants to save his people, I know that he wants to protect his son, and I know that he cared about his friend. So this moment actually hits for me, and I love that the line that snaps him out of it is Wikus saying, think of your son for F's sake. And that's the moment where he just, like, he breaks out of his trance and he goes into action and he starts making a bomb to get them out. Like, I loved everything about this, like, this minute of the movie. It just, like, okay, this is kind of the moment where I'm like, oh, this has got me. I think the first time I watched it, this was where I was like, you know what, I think I'm super invested in this now. Like, I really care about them helping each other.
I wonder if this is the moment also where Christopher, like, decides that he will help our other guy, Wikus, and Wikus, and I haven't had to say the name yet. They say it so fast in the movie too. So I think this is when he's like, I can help you, but right now, because of all this, my priority is my people, and you're just gonna have to wait.
Yeah, well, he reveals that when they get back to his place later. So there's a bit of a car chase where they're being chased by the military, but they get back to his place, and he's like, yeah. And from the implication, it sounds like he could have done it relatively quickly, but because he saw the slab and he saw what's happening to his people, he's like, I'm sorry, but I have to go and get help first. But I will come back, I promise, in 3 years, because that's how long it's going to take to go home and come back with, like, reinforcements.
Sequel bait.
Yeah, kind of, but not really. But, like, I promise I'll come back and help you, but it's going to take 3 years. And, this makes Wikus angry, and he hits him, he knocks him out, and, like, goes down and lies to his son that his dad's going to be along in a minute, but he has to, like, start the ship. And he tries to fly the shuttle up to the ship himself, and, he gets a little bit towards it, but then, of course, they have a rocket launcher, and they knock down the shuttle, so it doesn't get very far. Like, the military come and get him, and it's like this is very much your lowest end of. I mean, we're not really. Maybe we are still just at the end of Act 2 at this point, but it's definitely that low moment where it's like they've betrayed. Well, Chris didn't betray him, but he definitely went back in his word a little bit. And Wikus has just like acted angry and is out for himself again and is lying about things.
Yeah, he's selfish and he can't believe that he's not prioritized because he's in pain, even though he's watching everybody around him die.
Yep.
Everyone who looks like him now because he's turning into one of them. So like he's still not able to release that selfishness in him where he can like he doesn't understand that he is lower. Like this is more important right now.
Yeah, and that's not. I mean,
he could wait 3 years and be fixed apparently too. So
yeah, I don't think it's we've even said actually the overall thing in the movie, which it makes literal, is that he literally becomes one of the aliens, and that's like fits into the theme of him like sympathizing with them over the course of the movie. It's making it literal that he actually gets put in their shoes, But yeah, the military grab him because he's sort of like lying injured from the crash. Notably, they don't get the kid though. They don't even know the kid's in there, the little alien kid. And they get ambushed though because the gang, like, they really want Wikus back. So we get a big like fight between humans, which I also thought was quite an interesting little thematic thing. Is that ultimately what lets them succeed by the end is the fact that there's two factions of humans who are fighting over the weaponry and like being able to exploit them in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh yeah, this is like, it's just another commentary on humans that there were, even the separate groups all want to do nefarious things for power. They want to have the advantage. They want to have these benefits, kind of thing. So all that stuff's great, but
yeah, the fight for more weapons and like the fight for power is just cyclical.
So Wikus ends up in where the gang's stuff is, and the kid, Christopher's kid, is actually started playing with the computer on the shuttle, and he's basically maneuvering the big ship over the top of it. But he also, and I think it's him that does this, he basically like helps Wikus out by turning on the mech suit, the alien mech suit that's in the gang's place, and it kills some of the bad guys. And then Wikus doesn't right away, right? But he makes a choice out of fear to get in the mech suit so he's protected. And he goes out, and Christopher's lying there handcuffed, and the bad guy, the main like military bald guy, who's become kind of like this primary antagonist for the movie, calls Wikus out, but Wikus runs away in fear, and he's like, yeah, you run away, you coward. And they're going to kill Christopher Johnson. He's like, well, if he's not going to speak, if he's too smart to give in and tell us what we need to know and why the ship's moving, then just kill him. And Wikus hears this in the mech suit, like, there's like tech in the mech suit that lets him hear it from like a bit away, and he makes the choice to come back and save him. And this is truly the heroic turning point for the character, where he's like, no, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to get you to the ship, and more importantly, I think the line that hit me was, I'm going to get you to your boy, right? And he's like, Chris, grab a shield, which he does. And we get this great sequence of him running behind them and just blasting the mech guns at guys. And they just explode in a pool of blood. It is beautiful.
It is very gory. Lots of... I love it when a human is depicted as just a balloon filled with blood.
Well, what's great about it is I think it's the gang leader who...
Oh, I know which one you're going to go with.
Where... like, it's the first weapon the mech fires is like a canister that goes into his mouth, and you can actually see his head like bulbing like a balloon for a second before you get the wide shot where he just pops.
Yes.
It's lovely.
It's almost like light is trying to escape through his head physically.
Oh, I love it. It's just fun and playful. It's an aesthetic that I think we are more used to in video games that, at least at this time, had not appeared on a movie before, in this way.
And I think, obviously, Blomkamp is like a fan of video games, right? Because he was supposed to do a Halo movie after this.
Well, he did I believe he did a Halo. Did he do a short film?
This became the Halo movie that didn't come out, right?
Well, I don't know about that. He did a short film called District 9, which it was then developed into this. But I think he was developing a Halo movie at one point. I don't remember the exact specifics though. But I don't think this was originally the Halo movie. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Okay.
But this like, you know, when I talk about like everything being set up earlier on with the different factions, where the weapons are, but the heart of the film, like all these things just pop off perfectly. Where you've got an antagonist that you hate, that you can't wait to see get killed, and he gets killed with a bunch of prawns ripping him apart, and they save Wikus at the end ultimately. But you've also got the heartfelt moments of like Christopher saying, "I don't want to leave you," to Wikus, and after he's been, because he gets hit with like a lot of big high caliber sniper rifle shots, so the mech suit's starting to like break down and it's like struggling, and he's like, "No, don't make me have went through all this for nothing. Get to your son, save your people." And it's like truly selfless. And I think the two big things that stick out for me is the obvious one, which is that he went from being this guy who looked down on them and exploited them for his own gain in his career, and basically just bought into all the propaganda that he was being fed, to, you know, sympathizing and being more of a empathetic human being. That's great. The other part of it, though, which I think is maybe a little more subtle, is that for the first time in the film, he's fighting for something that he believes in himself. Like, you know, everything early on, it's for his career because he's been told that this is what we're supposed to do. He can't stand up to the military dude. So it's important at the end that when he's making these big moments to save Christopher Johnson, he's standing up against the guy who basically bullied him at the start. And he's saying, "No, I'm standing up against you." In the same way that Chris and the prawn hopefully will stand up against the humans, he's standing up against the human that's putting him down. And like, so I think like part of this, like, why I think the film's got a complete arc is that it's the arc of this character of Wikus ultimately like believing in something and be willing to fight for that belief. And it's why he's such a coward beforehand, because he doesn't really believe in anything. He doesn't know what he believes. And
yeah,
I think all that stuff's really beautiful.
Yeah, it was hard not to think of Edge of Tomorrow as well. Well, I watched this one again. I know that came out after, but I think there is quite a bit of influence on the character of well, whoever Ethan Hunt is playing in that movie. I can't remember his name, but like there is a lot of parallels with the Live Die Repeat character and Wikus.
I love how you said Ethan Hunt and not Tom Cruise.
You know, I got Fallout, or not Fallout, whatever the next James Bond. Goddamn.
James Bond?
Ethan Hunt.
Someone,
Mission Impossible.
Someone play that does not compute like dial tone sound, because I think Tara's brain just broke.
It did. It did. I was reaching for a thing anyway.
Yeah, I love that when Chris does get to the ship and they're going up to the big ship, the main bad guy's got a rocket launcher and he goes to fire it, and then like the last thing Wikus does in his mech suit is with the hand, he just grabs it and catches it and just throws it to the side. Like
a fly ball.
Yeah. It's just such a good moment. It's like that to
it's
me.
Great. Yeah.
That's the Hulk catching Iron Man of this movie. That's what that is. That is like, you didn't quite get that it would be that simple. Yeah. Like, I'm just so into everything in the last act of this movie. Like, it sets it up so well. It gives you a character who genuinely goes through a change in multiple fronts. It gives you an alien that we sympathize with, who does seem to care about our main character and promises that he'll come back and help him. And I believe him. You know, I don't see any reason to discount him. And I think part of the reason why I'd be hesitant for a sequel is, one, how like, there's no guarantee the quality would live up to what this is. But secondly, honestly, the ambiguity of like, yeah, what happens when they come back? Like, you know, they sort of like touch on that in the interview stuff at the end. It's like, does he come back and just like, with a lot of ships to take everyone away, the aliens away? Does he come back and declare war?
Do humans deserve it? And yeah, probably.
Yeah, like there's a lot of questions, but it's also that thing where in the end Wikus was genuinely good to him and tried to basically was about to sacrifice himself to help him. And that's the other thing, the bad guy, like when he sees Wikus come out the mech suit, because by this point one of his eyes has started to change, so he's like more close to being one of the prawns, and he calls him a half-breed, he calls him filthy, and it's like, he was a human 3 days ago, and like you've just completely changed how you look at him in that time because of an accident that he had no control over, and there's just this lack of any emotion towards it.
Yeah, it's almost like he's glad that he got turned so that he can treat him like the prawn that he wants to.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
He's just a monstrous person. Who's the real monster?
I mean, I feel like most movies make a point of saying by the end, man is the real monster. This movie opens with that.
It does, yeah.
And then by the end says, no, but some of us are all right. So I really like appreciate that, like all those little things, especially in this viewing where I was like paying attention to like Wikus's character arc in ways that I hadn't really thought about it before. I think there's a lot of depth there, and there's a lot of layers to it, on top of just all the action with the alien tech and the mech suit all being like just fun and well shot. And because it is lower stakes, when those big guns start firing and just blowing people up, it feels like a huge deal, right? As opposed to seeing like entire cities like be crumbled and stuff. It's like, it's just destruction porn at a certain point, and you get numb to it. Whereas every single time one of these people goes splat, you're like, yeah. Like,
this is what we want.
It's fun. So
no, I agree. It was such an exciting find, you know. I mean, not that it didn't have hype by the time I saw it. It did, but like getting a new director in a sci-fi with such a unique voice was so awesome. Too bad about the next ones, but
you know, I probably like the next ones more than most people do, but they are very, very flawed films. So I do look forward to talking about them at some point on the show, because I think there'll be a lot to discuss, if nothing else.
I mean, I agree with you in that this does feel like a complete story, and you can leave it there, and just, you know, the journey that Wikus goes through is enough to be like, this is the message of the film, and that's all. And maybe a sequel could mess with that, especially since the director is inconsistent, and if you get a sequel to a movie that's really great, then it could be very disappointing. But I still think that there's a sequel could be ripe for commentary, like you say, and I think there's a sequel there that could be great.
I think it reminds me of The Matrix a little bit, and that The Matrix, like, it probably more so. I feel like this is probably more open for sequels than The Matrix was in a weird way. But I think both this and The Matrix have the thing where it is a perfectly complete story, but there's an obvious plot thing to do. So a lot of people who are I'm trying to say this without being insulting. A lot of people who just look at plot and just look at plot beats and nothing else just assume that there's going to be a sequel because it's obvious, like, we have to see Neo, go further now that he's got all these powers. We have to see them come back for a District 10. Like, I think they both share that, where the story's done, the thematic arcs are closed, and it's a perfect movie ultimately at the end of like everything it's set out to do. It doesn't need a sequel. I do think this one like does offer, like you say, a lot of potential commentary and what you could do with a sequel, and like I mean, this film's already tackling very tough subjects and doing it in very, very upfront ways. It's not like hiding things. It's not, and I would even say it's beating you over the head with it. It's just not pulling its punches. Like it is straight up saying, look at how awful they're being to these aliens. The commentary is quite obvious. But I think if you do a movie where, like, okay, what if they came back and they actually wanted to have a war? Like, how do you like balance that from a storytelling perspective to make the humans see the nuance of like siding with either side and like understanding? I guess it would effectively have to be something that's kind of like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, where you have like sympathetic characters on either side, and the hope is that they're going to see a solution at the end that stops it being a war. That's what I would probably assume it'd have to be. But then you want some action, because it's also an action movie. So, you have to have something there as well. But I'm sure it's possible. But part of me is like, you know what? This is perfectly fine if this is just a standalone film that never has any more.
I agree. Like I agree. I'm satisfied with the story, and I think that it works as a standalone. But like I said, I think there is still room for more storytelling in this world. So if they want to, I won't be upset if they announce that is his next movie. Neill Blomkamp's going to make a District 10 finally, and Sharlto Copley is involved.
Copley? Who's Copley?
I don't know, man. It's a hard name.
Copley.
Copley.
I struggle with his first name, but Copley I find easy enough.
I forgot what it was. I was so concentrated on Sharlto.
Well,
I forgot what the last one is.
I believe Blomkamp's doing a RoboCop movie. I think that's still what's next on his plate. So hopefully that sees the light. because
Yeah.
I think he would fit with that world in a lot
I mean,
of ways.
there was basically an Ed 209 in this. And that's where like the motion capture thing kind of picked up too. Like that's what makes me think, oh, RoboCop.
I didn't get Ed 209 because that's not a. I was thinking way more Power Loader from Aliens because it's a mech suit that someone's in. You know, it's someone's wearing.
When you first
this.
see it though, it's like it's just a giant mech, right, walking around, and it's got before you see him in it.
Mm.
And I think that it does go into a like stop motion, and then it opens up and you see that there's a prawn inside it.
Yeah,
that's operating it.
Yeah, I don't know. That it felt way more like a James Cameron like type of thing to me, just because he's had both like an Avatar and Aliens. He's had like various mech suit ideas.
Honestly, I think it was just the mixture of the big machine with big legs and the and guns and the stop motion that made me think Ed 209, because the stop motion is kind of part of that character.
I think Ed 209 for me, like I think his defining feature is how top heavy he is. So I never thought of Ed 209 because he's a very top heavy mech like robot.
I know, at least to his demise.
Yeah, he stumbles down the stairs.
His one weakness.
He's Dalek. He just can't go down the stairs. Yeah, like and obviously the heart of the end is that he's left. The wife says earlier on that he makes things. He would like to make gifts for her, and like as a prawn, he's left this metallic flower that he's made out of junk and left it for her, and she's kind of hoping that came from him, but she's not sure. Everyone tells her that it can't possibly have come from him, but the final shot is him making this flower, and I think there's almost this thing where it's trying to like sort of make clear that part of his life was always like genuine. Like his love for his wife was always the good part of him when everything else was corrupted by the company, by the system, by everything else. Like that part was true, that part was real, and that's still there even after all this time.
Yeah, and I think because we like her, she's clearly a good person who has definitely been raised in privilege at this time, but has a lot of sympathy and seems to also really love Wikus, even though like her father doesn't approve and all that. And I think because we make sure that she is not corrupted by that the love story also works much better.
Yeah, and
because if she was kind of a trash person, then or just like like her father or something, just then I think the love story wouldn't work so well, or at least his hope for going back to her wouldn't seem so like desperate.
Yeah, it's quite impressive how economical the movie is by setting up so many like these like threads that don't really get that much time individually, but they all kind of add up to like paint a really full world around Wikus. Like his wife, his father-in-law. Like I wouldn't say any of these characters get a ton of screen time, but they all get enough that all fit together really well. That they all serve what his story is, and even like I was saying with Christopher Johnson and his son, that you get enough to sympathize for them. But the importance of them is what it does for Wikus' story, because it's ultimately always his story. But no, I loved it. I think it's so funny to me that it looks as good as it does, and it's so satisfying in a way. We just did all the Transformers movies. I think it's a good comparison point, is that this is a movie where it's a human main character, and then the aliens, who are arguably the money, characters that we're all excited to see because they're aliens and look cool, and in the mech suit and all that. That this gives you a compelling character, and then all of those other things fit into his story and make his story work, and his story is nothing without them, so they all feel important even if you're not seeing them constantly. That like you could only dream of a Transformers movie that feels that like tight from a script perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh god. So yeah, it's wild. I think it's a super impressive film that if anything just gets better when I see it, because I can pay attention to the subtleties. I can pay attention to like how it does certain little things, and but I always have fun with the big action moments, and the heart of the movie always hits me. Like it's the perfect mix. It's like, I even know, like obviously it's science fiction, but like it kind of works as a blockbuster even though it's a low budget movie. It works as a thoughtful science fiction film even though it's got a lot of cool action. it kind of works as it works on all these different fronts and is just a great time. So
I want to say like I know Sharlto was like the breakout star from that. Like everybody loved him, but he didn't like go on to do as much as I would have liked. Obviously, he's in the other ones that Blomkamp did with him, but like also,
well,
I did see the A-Team, and he was in that, which was fine. It was not that great of a film.
I mean, he was the best part of that movie, though, notably.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, he was. Yeah, he's not got like a huge prolific career. He's done more Blomkamp movies. He's got some TV appearances. He was the lead character in Powers, which was the one PlayStation original TV show. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a small.
I remember PlayStation TV.
Yeah, there was a small period where they were going to make originals like Netflix, but it only lasted like 2 years. And I think their only show was basically Powers, which was based on a Bendis comic that he was the lead in. And it got a second season, but it felt like it only got a second season so they could say, yeah, we're doing fine. This is like a thing we're going to stick to and commit to. And then they never made any other shows, and then that was it. It was cancelled. It was gone.
Yeah.
And for some weird reason, despite the fact that PlayStation's a worldwide brand with a worldwide like system and like network, it was only available in the US.
Oh, have you not seen it then?
I think I eventually saw the first episode. I think I did see the first episode, but it wasn't very good either, sadly. And I wanted it to be good because I like Copley, but it was.
Yeah, I just think that he's such a star. Like after that, you know, and it's just such a shame that like, he just was forgotten. It's really a shame that he wasn't nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah,
like the Oscars.
The last thing I saw him in, from 2016, was a movie called Free Fire, which honestly had a great premise, and I was then disappointed that I didn't love it. But it's got him, it's got Brie Larson, it does have Armie Hammer, who we don't like to think about as much anymore, but it's got Cillian Murphy.
Yes. Okay, I remember this movie.
Yeah, they're all in a room like in a gunfight that lasts the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which sounded great on paper, and the trailer looked cool, and then the movie was just okay. Like it didn't quite live up to that.
I did not see the movie, but I remember the movie. I remember the trailer.
Yeah.
I remember it coming out. Yeah.
I think
I think I get him confused sometimes with like Rhys Darby. I think they're very similar in like the kind of characters that they play. I know they have different accents, but like I can see the Jumanji movie, and like the guy driving the Jeep or whatever is Sharlto Copley, but like it's not him. You know, I think it might be Rhys Darby, it might be somebody else. Like he's a good caricature actor, but like I feel like I don't know, maybe Hollywood's doing Rhys Darby and putting Sharlto aside for another time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's up to. He's got a few things in pre or post production that he's coming out in. We've got Boy Kills World, Desert Warrior, and Monkey Man. I don't know what any of those are, but
nope. I hope they're great. I hope one of them at least is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually a little bit curious. Let's have a look. Monkey Man, a recently released ex-felon living in India struggles to adjust to a world of corporate greed and eroding spiritual values. Directed by Dev Patel? Wasn't expecting that.
Interesting.
He's also in it as well. Okay. I mean, that's interesting, if nothing else. Boy Kills World, a dystopian fever dream action film, follows Boy, a deaf mute with a vibrant imagination. When his family is murdered, he is trained by a mysterious shaman to repress his childish imagination and become an instrument of death. This stars Bill Skarsgård. Oh, and Jessica Roth. I like her from Happy Death Day. Femke Jensen's in it. I don't know the director of this one. I don't recognize the name. But okay, that's on the maybe to watch pile.
Sounds original.
And then Desert Warrior, which stars alongside Copley, Ben Kingsley and Anthony Mackie.
Okay.
Directed by Rupert Wyatt, who I think did Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I want to say.
Yeah.
An honorable and mysterious rogue known as Hanzala makes himself an enemy of the Emperor Kishra after he helps a fugitive king and princess in the desert. Not a lot to go on there, but...
All right, a lot of mystical stuff coming up. I'm all right with this.
So yeah, those are all in various stages of development. So
Come on, this is gonna be your year.
yeah.
Or whenever these come out.
Yeah. Ah, damn. RoboCop's not listed on the upcoming for Blomkamp anymore. Oh, I forgot he was doing Gran Turismo, which is out like 2 months' time.
That's right.
That's such a weird. Yeah, that's such a weird. That doesn't look like a Blomkamp movie. It just looks like a movie that he happened to direct.
He likes video games.
I get. I didn't think that meant Gran Turismo though. It's very different from all the sci-fi games that he probably likes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. His other film though that he's got in development is a science fiction film though. It's called They Found Us. During a camping trip in the Utah wilderness, to heal their broken relationship, a father and daughter must fight against a hostile extraterrestrial life form to prevent their abduction to an unknown and terrifying alien world. And this has got Joel Kinnaman in it.
Well, I would say I'm excited, but his last two sci-fis have not been so good.
Like, don't sell him short. I believe that Blomkamp can do it again. Just one more time, Blomkamp. Come on, give me another winner.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
That's all I want in life. Is another good Duncan Jones movie and another good Neil Blomkamp movie.
You should watch Warcraft.
I'm not going to like Warcraft. You know I'm going to hate it.
Make it a stream movie or something.
I'm going to hate that thing, and you damn well know it. Anyway, that's the episode, I guess. I guess it's time to rate District 9. We've been talking about other things for the last 5 minutes, so what are you rating the film?
I think the movie's pretty perfect. I don't really have too much to complain about. And the obvious allegory there is incredibly strong, if not stronger than even it intended to be. Yeah, I think this one's a 9.5 for me.
I actually am going to give it the exact same score. That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah. 9.5. I think I'm not quite ready to just slap a 10 on it, because that's a big number to slap on a movie. But I think
it's damn near close though.
It's I think it's a wonderful film. I think it for me in a lot of ways, this and Moon in 2009, like, I mean, not that I was ever out of love with science fiction, but it sort of reinvigorated my love of both science fiction and like upcoming directors and indie movies, and like yeah. It was just they're both these just fresh breaths of air, and I always appreciate it. It's just why I was like determined to get you to watch Coherence back 100 or so episodes ago, because I'm like, this is that type of interesting little movie that's just so fun and playful, and like, hey, they did this with very little money.
It's fun. It's a fun one to share.
Yeah.
Also, like, look at this. You probably don't know it.
So no, it's great. But there you go. That is District 9, and that has been episode 200 of the Atomic Cinema Experiment, which admittedly does not count any like top 10s or countdown episodes or anything like that. I only numbered the movie episodes.
Just the movies.
So also worth it. Something here I'll just kind of announce. Is we're planning on doing another top 10 in the not too distant future for something that's not a decade, right? So a couple of years ago we did top 10 time travel movies. We are going to do another one like that, and we're probably going to spend like a month doing some movies that fit into whatever that theme is, whatever that subgenre that we're going to do a top 10 of. And we've got a few ideas of what that could be, but I think I won't tell you exactly what they are yet, because I think we'll refine it. But I think we'll probably put that up as a bonus vote for patrons, is to pick which subject we're going to look at. So last time it was time travel. This time we'll see what
I know what I want it to be.
yes. But you're not allowed to say. No influencing the vote.
Read my mind. No. People read my mind.
No influencing. But yeah. So yeah, of course you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And we're at 200 episodes, but we're also at about 50 bonus episodes. At $3 and up, you get access to the bonus episode catalog. There's a new one every month. With $5 and up, you get access to the Ace Meltdown, which is just a casual monthly show where me and Tara talk about all the movies we've been watching, sometimes even what video games we've been playing. And we'll do a little sci-fi movie quiz at the start of each episode, just to keep it a little bit sci-fi related. But that's a nice casual, laid-back podcast. So if any of that sounds interesting, and of course you get bonus stuff for the other shows that are on Male Fuzz Movies as well, at those same tiers. Go and have a look, and help keep all the content coming. But that is the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.